In today's business landscape, customers demand the highest standard, and companies that fail to meet those standards risk falling behind and losing business. Welcome to Nexus Consultancy. We have dedicated over 15 years to helping businesses to implement ISO management systems for improved quality, compliance, operational excellence, and customer satisfaction. Our company's purpose is simple, which is to empower business and people. Our team of experts work closely with our customers to access their needs and create customized solutions that meet their specific requirements. We conduct thorough audits and evaluations to identify areas for improvement and help our customers implement changes that drive success. Our consultants have extensive experience and serve over 2,000 customers, and we stay up to date with the latest industry trends and best practices. Whether you're a small business just starting out or a large corporation looking to improve your operations, Nexus Consultancy is here to help you optimize your operations, increase profits, and achieve your business goals.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. So before I start, I would like to do a quick sound check. If you can hear my voice loud and clear, could you please react with a thumbs up or type in the chat box? Okay, thank you for the response and nice to see everyone here. I'm Grace Ong from Nexus Consultancy and I will be the speaker for this webinar today. And thank you for joining us. So what we do at Nexus Consultancy is we support business leaders and their teams in growing their businesses through the implementation of ISO management systems and as well as food safety management system via consultancy and training services. So today's webinar will be a 1-hour session and followed by a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section and we will address them during the end of the webinar today. So for today's topic, we will be discussing the key changes to this new PRP standard series, which is the ISO 22002. So specifically focusing on what food safety team need to be aware on moving forward. So this update is very important because with this introduction of this new ISO 22002 standard, it will directly impact how prerequisite programs will be implemented under both FSSC 22000 as well as ISO 22000. So before we dive into these updates, I would like to quickly understand everyone's background industry. So I will launch a Zoom poll. So you may answer them and we will see how to get to know everyone's background as well as your current food safety certification. I will give about 30 seconds. Okay, as for now, I have 26 of participants have answered. Okay, so I will stop the poll now. So as from the results, it seems that most of you are certified under FSSC 22000 and followed by ISO 22000. And whereas the rest are from others or planning for certification. But regardless, you're still welcome to join for today's webinar. And most of the participants here today are from food manufacturing industry, as well as from other industry and also packaging industry. So, sorry, forgot to share the results. Okay, so for today, we will be mainly covering on food manufacturing industry as well as food packaging industry. Thank you everyone for joining in the poll. So for this is a brief introduction of what is PRP about, and PRP stands for Prerequisite Program and it is defined in ISO 22000 clause 7.2. So this actually helps industry in defining, handling provision of safe and end product for human consumption, whereby food safety basic conditions and activities that are necessary to maintain hygienic environment suitable for production. So examples of the areas that PRP covers are on handling practices, maintenance, pest control, as well as hygiene control. So with this introduction of new PRP of ISO 32002 standard, we now have a structured set of international standards that clearly define these PRP requirements. So this replaces the previous old technical spec, which is known as ISO TS 22002 series, and it provides more clarity on how organizations should establish and maintain these programs. So you can think of PRP as the foundation of a building. If the foundation is weak, the entire food safety system will be unstable. So before we even talk about hazard or risk control, we need to ensure that these basic conditions in the PRP are already strong and well controlled. Okay, so next, now let's take a look at the structure of this new ISO 22002 requirements. So these ISO 22002 standards are divided into different parts, and each are tailored to specific sector within the food supply chain. So for example, you can see here, part 1 focuses on food manufacturing, 2 is on catering, part 4 is on food packaging manufacturing, part 5 on transport and storage, part 6 on feed and animal food production, and part 100 is the most important addition, which covers the core PRP requirements that apply across the entire food, feed, packaging, as well as supply chain. So instead of repeating the common requirements in every part, they are now centralized under this part 100, whereby part 100 covers the common requirements and the other parts cover the sector-specific requirements. So for today, we will be mainly focusing on the major and key changes which will impact on the food manufacturing and packaging manufacturing. So we are discussing the updates based on the new ISO 22000 standard against the previous ISO TS technical spec standard, and specifically focusing on part 1, which is on food manufacturing, as well as part 4 on food packaging manufacturing. So meaning that this part 100 standard book should be used as a pair with your sector specific standard book. So it's like 1 + 1. Yeah. So without further ado, let's now go into the key changes to see what has actually been updated in these standards. Okay. So let's see for the key changes for food manufacturing. Okay. First part is on this, whereby now ISO TS is no longer technical specification. It has been upgraded as a full ISO standard. And next, it has been restructured and integrated with 2 standards. So part 100 will be the core prerequisite program and complemented with part 1, which is specifically addressing on the food manufacturing specific PRPs, followed by revision requirements in the layout, premises, and workspace. And we have a new topic on waste, food loss, waste management, as well as recycling, and rewording on pest control and additional requirements in control eradication, and elaborate more on the measures of prevention of contamination. And new requirements have been also added for dispatch, as well as control of visitors and external providers. And for this food defense and food fraud, it has also been newly added in this ISO 22002, which it is also included with a clear guideline on how you can implement in this ISO 22002. Okay, and on the last part is on the product recall procedures has also been removed, but this part will be covered under ISO 22000. Okay, next, let's look at for food packaging manufacturing. These changes are quite similar when we compare to part 1, mainly due to the integration of the requirements into part 100. So the common requirements that were previously repeated across different sectors are now centralized in part 100, which makes the structure much more clearer and also more consistent. So the main changes will be on, the main differences between sectors will be on point number 6, which is on the measures for prevention of contamination. So later I will share on this part during the webinar. Okay. So now ISO 22002 is considered as a full ISO standard and is no longer a technical specification document, whereby now it has a stronger authority, wider acceptance by regulators and certification scheme, as well as better global consistency, and alignment with ISO 22000. And next, for this one, there is a new restructure and integration of new two standards, which is the Part 100 as well as the sector-specific ones. So a quick recap whereby ISO 22002 Part 100 serve as the core backbone of the PRP framework, which it consolidates the common requirement across food, feed, and packaging operations. So instead of repeating this requirement, they are all shared under Part 100. And this is to improve the consistency as well as reduce duplication. So whereby for the sector-specific PRP, it shall be referred in the sector-specific series, like I shared just now in the previous slide. So besides that, the clause numbers are also restructured to standardize across the ISO 22002 series, which means that organization will need to review and align their existing documentation based on this updated structure. So as you can see from the table here, it shows that the clause number has been reorganized and renumbered as compared to the previous technical spec. So you can see here, the main changes here are the ones that I have highlighted in red font. Okay, so example here is on pest control. So last time in TS, it was specified in clause 11. Now it has changed to clause 7 on pest control. Okay, and it has also been enhanced with a subclause 7.6 for control eradication. So besides that, there are certain topics like food defense and food fraud was also added, and product recall is no longer specified in Part 100 and Part 1. So please do also take note that for rework usage here is not stated in Part 100, but it is only stated in Part 1 of this ISO 22002. So this means that for the organization, we need to review and also map their existing procedure to this new clause structure. So for later on of this webinar, we will deep dive to each of these clauses. Okay. So similarly, for food packaging manufacturing, the clause structure has also been reorganized. So as you can see previously, it was 4.1 until 4.12, but right now it has been integrated and standardized across different sectors based on your specific sector and as well as the Part 100 one. Okay, so it has also been reorganized and renumbered, and we will go through all the changes highlighted in red in the upcoming sections. Okay. So there are revisions in the layout of premises and workspace requirements. So now there is a stronger emphasis on the logical flow, including recycled and reused materials, as well as it focuses on minimizing contamination and cross-contamination based on risk. Additional requirement on equipment shall be covered where overhead cleaning is not feasible, and storage area must be also properly segregated and secured, especially for chemicals and hazardous substances. So in this old technical spec Part 1, specifically for food manufacturing sector, laboratory facilities requirement has been removed. So it is also it is actually standardized as a general requirement rather than a specified ones now. So for temporary or mobile premises from ISO TS Part 1, Clause 5.6 and ISO TS Part 4, Clause 4.2.5 shall be referred to Clause 5.2. Okay, so next, for pest control, the requirements for food manufacturing Part 1 and food packaging manufacturing Part 4 shall be referred to Part 100. So the requirements are now more descriptive and more clearly defined under Clause 7.1 and 7.2. So additional focus will be on preventing access, whereby for Part 4, they specifically mention on the outside storage. And for monitoring and detection in Clause 7.5, it emphasized stronger on the outsourced service review, as well as documented inspections has to be retained and analyzed. And in Clause 7.6 for control and eradication, they focus more on the control part, whereby we have to identify on the cause of the infestation. Corrective action shall be taken based on the investigation. So documented information of pesticide use has also been added, whereby the result of pesticide use and handling of the affected product, if applicable, has been also defined in this newly added section in the pest control clause. Okay. So moving on, in this ISO 22002 Part 1 and also Part 4, for this waste, food loss, waste management and recycling shall be referred to ISO 22002 Part 100. So additional food loss and waste requirement refers to it shall include identification, collect, contain, removal, as well as separate this designated storage area shall be provided for food loss and food waste. And food loss and waste storage area shall be designed and maintained to prevent contamination. And next, in clause 8.2, for recycling and or also reuse of material is a newly added requirement under ISO 22002 Part 100. So recycling or reuse shall be properly identified and stored separately. So before reuse, the materials must be inspected and cleaned as required. And if they cannot be cleaned or repaired to the required standard, so it must be treated as waste. And reused material must be only used for their intended and appropriate purpose. So for clause 8.3 on waste container shall be in adequate numbers and capacity, as well as it must be designed to prevent pest infestation. So this part is a newly added requirements under this Part 100. And for drainage and drains requirement from TS, Part 1 and also Part 4 are now moved into ISO 22002 Part 100 Clause 4.3 under construction and layout. So next, let's move to the measures of prevention and contamination. So contamination and prevention activities are highly sector specific. So that means say that you should refer to your own sector specific standard rather than Part 100. So in Part 100, it's just a very general guideline. Most of the requirements has been reworded, and for microbiological, it has been rephrased and changed to biological agent. Okay, so for Part 1, the main changes is on allergen control in clause 12.3, whereby products shall be protected from unintended allergen cross-contact as applicable. So these are the sub-points that has been added in this subclause. So examples are such as through cleaning and line over change practices, product sequencing, airflow control, additional protective clothing, through the use of dedicated tools and equipment, and on-site catering control, including vending machines. So besides that, there's a new section that has been recently added, which is for clause 12.5 on chemical control. So the newly added requirements are measure to be in place to prevent contamination of food or food contact materials by chemical. And industry shall also include the approval and control of chemicals, specific equipment for chemical use, as well as if in case there is any contamination occurs, for example, chemical spillage or cross-contamination, there must be action taken and documented. So next, we come to the requirements for food packaging manufacturing. So for Part 1, it has been reworded, and from microbiological, there's a change of term into biological agents, and it is less specific and condensed compared to the OTS standard. And for Part 4, there is no microbiological contamination referencing in this sector-specific Part 4, as well as allergen. So it has been briefly mentioned in Part 100. Okay, so for chemical contamination, physical contamination, as well as migration, the requirements are the same as in the previous standard in ISO TS 22002 Part 4. So besides that, there's also a new requirements on dispatch has been added in clause 11.2, so whereby inspection before dispatch has to be conducted to ensure that they are in clean, good repair and suitable for the purpose and free from other pests and also other conditions which may impact on the product and materials. So the loading practices shall be designed to maintain the integrity of the product and material. So this part here, it emphasizes more on the proper loading practices to maintain the product integrity during transport. So moving on, there is also a new requirements on the control of visitors and external provider under clause 14.8, whereby if there is any risk of product contamination, it shall follow the documented requirement of the organization for personal hygiene. So whereby visitor and also external provider, they must follow hygiene requirement of the industry. And they must be instructed and supervised and wear the protective clothing, whereby if they visit into the places. So prior getting access to the product processing or handling area, visitor and also external provider shall be guided through the hygiene requirement and encouraged to report any type of illnesses and injury which may cause any cross-contamination issue. So moving on is on food defense. So food defense here is quite similar for those of you who had already certified under FSSC version 6. So last time in TS, it only covers on food defense and bioterrorism for management of security incident. So in this latest ISO 22002 Part 100, so organization shall conduct and document food defense threat assessment and to develop a mitigation measure, establish a food defense plan, as well as conduct training, communication, and periodic review. So in Annex A, it has a detailed examples of food defense measure, so which is in the standard book itself. So you may use this as a guideline when you establish this food defense plan. Okay. So for this food fraud prevention, it is actually a new part that has been added in this PRP standard, but this is also quite similar to those who had already certified under FSSC version 6. So whereby organizations shall conduct and document food fraud vulnerability assessment, develop mitigation measures, as well as establish a food fraud defense plan. So training, communication, and periodic review shall be conducted as well. So in Annex B, this Part 100 has also given a very detailed food fraud mitigation measures as well. So you may use this as a guideline to develop the food fraud prevention plan. Okay. So for the last part is on the product recall and withdrawal. It is no longer included in ISO 22000. So previously for food manufacturing industry, it is called as product recall procedure, whereby in food packaging manufacturing, it is called under withdrawal procedure. However, in this new PRP standard, it has been removed and it shall only be referred to ISO 22000, 22000 clause 8.9.4 under withdrawal and recall. All right, so I hope this gives you a clearer understanding on the changes and how it may impact the current system. And we may now open the floor if you have any questions. So if you have any question, you may also type in the chat box and we shall address them. And yeah, feel free to type in. So Suzila from Vans Bioenergy, hello, nice to meet you. Would you provide presentation slide copy or recording? Yes. So during the end of this webinar, we will have a QR code where we will have a PRP audit readiness check. So once after you have scanned the QR code, we will share the recording as well as the presentation notes to you. Yep. Okay, so when will be the transition period for this new series? Okay, so this transition period for ISO 22000, as for now, there is no defined transition period yet. But however, if you are certified under FSSC, it shall be followed once after version 7 release. You'll be given a 12-month transition period. So from there, you can start to plan out and start to read up the requirements that are required for you to address on these changes. So meaning to say that for FSSC, transition period will be 12 months. But if you are certified under ISO 22000, you may check with your certification body. If they are ready to audit you based on the new PRP standard, you can always be ready to upgrade. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Okay, so for Pavitra, clause 12.5, specific equipment for chemical. What does it mean actually? Okay, so under here, let me go back to my slide. You mean is here, right? Okay, just a moment. Specific equipment for chemicals. So for example, it shall be referred to the cleaning tools where you keep your chemicals. It shall be suitable to keep food chemicals. So Yvonne, okay. So what is the difference between food defense and food fraud? So this for those of you who have already certified under FSSC, it shall be familiar to you all. So food defense, it means is the effort to protect food from acts of intentional adulteration. So examples are such as tampering, sabotage, terrorism, vandalism, and also theft. So the main motive behind this is due to malicious intent. So they want to cause harm or to terrorize, to jeopardize the company's reputation. Okay, so whereas for food fraud, the motive behind is due to the financial profit. So it's talking about economic gain. So examples are such as substitution or adulteration, like adultering honey with sugar syrup or mislabeling different grading of meat. Yep. So hope it answers your question. And okay, so for Darren Tang, okay, how is food loss and waste in ISO 22000 different from FSSC context? Okay, so for under the terms and definition in ISO 22002 Part 100, food loss and waste is referred as a whole term itself. So you can flip to the terms and definition. It is defined as a food and or associated inedible parts removed from the food supply chain. So whereas definition in FSSC 22000 guidance document, okay, so food loss is defined as the loss of food occur before the food reaches consumer as a result due to supply chain. So supply chain processes are such as production, process, storage, and also distribution practices. So on the other hand, food waste refers to food that are fit for consumption but consciously discarded at the retail or consumption level. So the main difference here is where food loss and waste in ISO 22000 Part 100 is parked under Clause 8 of waste here. Okay. So the requirements here says that you should identify and dispose well, and also it must be documented. Okay, so whereas in FSSC wise, it is more on the sustainability part. So sustainability meaning to say that you have to identify the whole chain itself to define that where this food loss will occur and where would food waste will occur. So for FSSC documentation wise, it shall be supported with policy objectives as well as measurement of the food loss and food waste. Yeah. So SPK has a question, waste packaging. Plastic packaging include clause 8.0. Okay, so may I seek for clarification? Does it mean that whether does this waste applies to packaging industry as well? Okay, so for this waste, right, For food loss and food waste shall not be applicable to packaging industry. However, yes, waste shall be identified, labeled, and also stored appropriately for food packaging industry. Yeah. Okay, no Fatiha Ismail. Okay, as per FSSC version 6 scheme, food loss and waste clause can be excluded, right, for food packaging sector. Yes, correct. So if you are in food packaging industry, you will not be following on this FLW requirements lah. So, but waste, yes, you have to follow on this part. Okay, Fiona Wong. Okay, we are plastic food packaging manufacturer. Is allergen control applied to our sector? So when we are talking about food packaging industry, there are some packaging, for example, if you are dealing with printing, some industry will be using soy ink, or some will be using sustainable packaging, such as they maybe use like wheat glue or ingredients that are involving allergen, then yes, it would be applicable to food packaging. But however, if you do not have allergen in the industry, in your manufacturing sector, you should have a certain control on the allergen part as well. So examples are such as you have to give your staff an understanding of what are allergens about. So how can they control to not bring allergen into the production. So for example, after they eat, they should wash their hands or through proper PPE gowning. So this is one of the way on how you control on the allergen for packaging manufacturing sector. Does rewording from microbiological to biological agents require us to review and revise on our existing hazard analysis? Actually, it's just on the terminology change. But if you have your existing hazard analysis, it can be follow back, just remain back your existing hazard analysis. So for the document controller or QA or for the food safety team, if you are dealing with your procedures or form, right? So you should take note on the additional requirement changes, like what I showed in the red form just now, as well as the clause changes. So for Pavitra's question, you can just remain your existing hazard analysis. So I have a question from Yvonne. How do the two standards, Part 100 and also sector-specific standards, practically work together? So Part 100 is, you can imagine it as a backbone, okay, of a standard that it consolidates all the common requirements. So on top of that, so you have different sectors. So example such as like Part 1 for food manufacturing sector and Part 4 for food packaging sector. So Part 100 should be used as a baseline, as a backbone to support the industry sector specific ones. So it should be used together in conjunctionally. So for example, if you were to refer to the standard book of the sector specific one, ISO 22002 Part 1. So in some of the clauses, they would just mention there as this clause shall refer to ISO 22002 Part 100. So it should be used in conjunctionally. So it's like a 1+1 book. So you have total 2 books to follow. Yeah. Okay, I hope it answers your questions. Okay, I have a question from Kang Ka Hao. May I confirm whether companies that are already certified to FSSC are compliant with this ISO 22000 X standards? So as for now, if you are certified under FSSC, you shall wait for version 7 to be released first. So there are news that for version 7, it will be released around May this year. So usually they will give you a 12-month transition period. So during that 12-month transition period, you can start to review what are the changes required and you can start to implement. So when version 7's when it kicks off, when it started, so you can integrate it on your next audit cycle. So for this one, right, if you are certified under FSSC, A practical approach for you is to do a gap analysis first against the new PRP structure, and you can map out what are the current PRPs to Part 100 and plus your relevant sector-specific standard. So you can update the clause references, check wherever requirements, which part has been revised or strengthened. So you can start to revise your procedures and to conduct training as well. And don't forget to update the internal audit checklist accordingly as well. Yeah. How should the organization review the PRP in preparation for version 7 changes? So for Darren's question, practical approach is to start with gap analysis first. So to see what are the things that are not complying or that are missing from the new requirements under the new ISO 22002 standard. So you can start to map out what are the changes. So you can start review through the procedures first to understand what are the requirements and which part shall be revised and strengthened. So for Sprite Chong's question, where to get this ISO 22000 Part 100? Can it be purchased from Malaysia standard? So as for now, we purchase through the ISO website itself. So for Malaysian standard, there's no release from them yet. Okay, okay, thank you for the question. Question from Pavitra. Does recycling and or use of material have the same or similar definition with reprocess? So for this one, you have to refer back to the terms and definition of the recycling and also reuse. So allow me to Yep. So for here, right, for Parita's question, actually I have remarked that. So for recycling in the terms and definition, it means that it's a diversion of material from the waste stream during a manufacturing process. So it excludes the reutilization of material, such as reuse or regrind of scrap generated in a process that are capable to be reclaimed within the same process that generates it. So for example, if you have a material that you produce, but you want to reuse it, so it is considered as a recycling. So where if you reuse is more like rework based on the standard, the terms and definition. It means the action on a non-conforming product service to make it conform to the requirement. So being make it simplify is where reuse is equivalent to rework based on the terms and definition in the standard book on ISO 22002 Part 100. Okay, so question from Suzila. In clause 7.6, it has mentioned about the result of pesticide use. Can you elaborate further how to fulfill this? We are engaging external service provider, not store and use the pesticide. Okay, thank you for the question, Suzila. So for this part, right, when I was reviewing the standard as well, so usually I would suggest that if you have your pest control trend analysis report, right? So from there, usually they will give you an overview of the trend of the year. So from there, you can see that whether the pest amount has been reduced or increased. So that part can be used as a result to prove that this service is actually efficient. Yeah. Hi, Navina. Navina is my client from Plus. Nice to meet you. So yeah, feel free to share with the participants on this Zoom as well. If anyone that are having this similar issue, you can share with you can share in the Zoom chat as well, right? Okay. So no Fatiha Ismail. All right. So question where health status clause is new for food packaging sector. Does it mean moving forward, food packaging worker need to go for typhoid injection? For health status, which part are you referring to? Which clause? Just a moment, let me check that. Here, I have a standard book with me. Clause 14.5. Allow me to go through the standard book first. So coming back to Fatiha's question, thank you for your question. So from here, I read from 14.5 health status, the organization shall ensure the health of the personnel does not have adverse event on the product. So documented procedures for handling illnesses and injuries shall be established and incorporate any statutory or regulatory requirements. Okay, and personnel shall required to report illness and injuries that can have an impact on the food safety to management or the relevant authority. So from here, right, the symptoms to consider, there's a footnote there. It mentions that it includes jaundice, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, sore throat, and visibly infected skin lesions. So as for the previous experience, for a lot of food manufacturing industry, they are actually not, they don't really go for typhoid. But for if you are dealing with foreign workers, do make sure that they go for MEMA check. Yeah. So the reason being here is where the risk level is actually different, because for food packaging is usually it is not food, whereby if the risk level is actually different. So it still depends on the auditor's justification on this part. So question from Suzila, since version 7 is yet to be published, but ISO 22000 series already published, should we now work on it for documentation update, internal audit, etc.? If we are going to be audited with version 6 this year, and it is an announced audit, is the CP will audit us based on the current ISO TS or the 22002 new series? So for this one, if you are going for audit this year, I would suggest that you can still stick with your TS first. Okay, so once after next year, because the transition period will start from May this year. So you can start to prepare, but you do not have to reflect in your standard book yet lah, because it's still not a requirement. But you may also check with your certification body, but usually certification body, you also need to give them time to be prepared on the auditor side as well. So you can start to prepare first, but if you have your TS, you may stick with it first, because the official date will start after the transition period date has been launched lah. Yep. Okay, so yep, since now is 12:45. Okay. Thank you everyone for your questions. I'm grateful for the questions that I've given, and I hope that this session is a fruitful one for everyone. Okay. So for here, before we close for today's session, we have prepared a short PRP audit readiness check. Okay, so many organizations only realize that during audit, the team will struggle with how to explain on PRP support, on hazard control, or why certain hazards are managed by PRP instead of CCP. Okay, so this quick check helps to reflect on which area in your own food safety system that has a gap on it. Okay, so it takes about 1 to 2 minutes to complete. And besides that, if you wish to receive the webinar slides and also recording, you may take a photo of this QR code, and please scan the QR code or use the link that is shared in the chat, okay, to complete the readiness check. So my admin side will share a link for you all, okay, and we will send the materials to your email tomorrow. So I will wait about 1 minute to allow everyone to scan or take a photo of the QR code. I'll move on to the next slide, yeah. Okay, right. So a bit of introduction to our upcoming webinar. So the upcoming webinar will be the topic on ISO 37001 on anti-bribery management system. So the Construction Industry Development Board, CIDB, has already announced that for ISO 37001 anti-bribery certification will be required for G7 contractor SPKK registration, and renewal will be starting on January 2027 next year. So this requirement may affect procurement process, subcontractor management, and tender practices. So governance and control, as well as governance control across constructions. Okay, so in this webinar, Sila will be explaining on what are the requirements under this ISO 37001, and she will share on the practical steps on how G7 contractors are applicable for this update. Okay, so if you have any connections in the construction industry and is involved in this G7 contracting organization, especially those in the construction leadership, project management, procurement or compliance, do feel free to share to them. Registration is free and don't miss out. Feel free to join us on 8 April and yeah, feel free to share with them. Okay, so lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to wish all of our Muslim participants and clients a blessed Hari Raya Aidilfitri and wishing you a safe journey back to your hometown and have a joyful, meaningful celebration with your loved ones. And thank you everyone for your time and participation today. So I truly appreciate your attention and I hope this session has provided you some insights, some valuable information as well for this implementation or update on this ISO 22002 updates. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me on my phone number, email, or LinkedIn, and you may contact Nexus Consultancy as well. So, yep, hope to see you again. Goodbye.